Watch live. The historic Artemis II mission concludes as NASA astronauts Reid Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and CSA astronaut Jeremy Hansen splash down safely in the Pacific Ocean after their 10-day journey around the moon. The Orion spacecraft made a successful re-entry on Friday, April 10, 2026, marking the first crewed mission to travel beyond low Earth orbit in over 50 years. Witness the final moments of this groundbreaking lunar adventure, the recovery operations by the U.S. Navy, and the crew's return to Earth. Timestamps 0000. Live coverage begins. 1 size. Re-entry atmosphere. 2 parachute deployment. 3 size. Splashdown. The Pacific was an endless sheet of hammered silver until the sky broke. High above, a streak of ionized fire tore through the atmosphere, the Orion capsule hitting the air at 25,000 miles per hour. Inside, the G-force was a physical weight, pinning Reid, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy into their seats as the heat shield bled away thousands of degrees in a brilliant plasma white shroud. Then came the jolt. The drogues fired first, stabilizing the tumble. A moment later, the 3 massive orange and white main parachutes blossomed against the blue. The roar of re-entry faded into the whistling of the wind. Houston, we have a visual on the water. Commander Reid Wiseman's voice crackled over the comms, steady despite the adrenaline. Below, the USS San Diego waited, its deck crowded with recovery teams and engineers holding their breath. The capsule hit the water with a monumental plume of white spray, a perfect, soft landing. As the capsule bobbed in the gentle swells, the side hatch finally hissed open. The salty Pacific air rushed in, replacing the sterile, recycled oxygen of the cabin. Victor Glover was the first to look out, squinting against the bright Earth sun. "Welcome home, Artemis II," the recovery lead radioed. After 10 days in the shadow of the moon, the crew wasn't just back on Earth. They were standing on the doorstep of the next era of human history. The moon was no longer a distant light. It was a place they had been, and a place we were finally staying. The cabin of the Orion was a screaming centrifuge of vibration and fire. Inside, Christina Koch watched the plasma glow outside her window, a violent, beautiful violet that signaled they were tearing through the atmosphere at Mach 32. Stay on the needles, she thought, her internal monologue, a rhythmic mantra against the crushing 6Gs. Beside her, Victor Glover felt the physical weight of the entire mission pressing into his chest. His lungs fought for every sip of oxygen, but his eyes remained locked on the digital displays. This wasn't a simulation anymore. The ride of their lives was reaching its crescendo. "Drogues away," Reid Wiseman grunted, the words squeezed out of him. The violent shaking suddenly gave way to a series of rhythmic tugs. High above, the 3 main parachutes unfurled like giant, blooming carnations. For a moment, there was a surreal silence, just the whistling of wind against the charred heat shield. Jeremy Hansen glanced at the altimeter. 3,000 feet. We're home. Second. On the deck of the USS San Diego, the recovery teams moved with practiced military precision. Divers hopped from the open bays of SH-60 Seahawk helicopters, hitting the water just as the capsule slammed into the Pacific. A massive geyser of white spray erupted, and for a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then the capsule bobbed to the surface, its uprighting bags inflating like neon orange lungs. Inside, the silence was heavy. The crew sat in the sudden stillness of Earth's gravity, feeling the unfamiliar, sickening roll of the ocean waves. Reid reached out, his hand trembling slightly from the sudden return of weight, and toggled the comms. "Houston, Orion, we are stable. It's good to feel the tug of the tide." The hatch hissed open, and the scent of salt spray and fuel rushed in. It was a sharp, biting contrast to the sterile, metallic smell of the moon's shadow. As the recovery divers secured the flotation collar, the crew looked at each other. 4 people who had seen the far side of the moon, now just 4 humans bobbing in the vast, welcoming blue of the Pacific. The USS John P. Murtha cut through the Pacific swells, a floating fortress ready for the history it was about to carry. The recovery was a masterclass in military precision. Once the capsule was secured by the Sasquatch team and stabilized with an inflatable collar, the front porch was deployed, a buoyant platform that allowed the astronauts to finally step out of their cramped, charred home. One by one, the crew emerged. Christina Koch was first, squinting against the late afternoon California sun, followed by Victor Glover, Jeremy Hansen, and finally Commander Reid Wiseman. They didn't walk at first. After 10 days in microgravity, their bodies felt like lead. They were hoisted by helicopter in specialized rescue baskets and flown directly to the deck of the Murtha. As the helicopter touched down, the ship's hangar bay erupted. Hundreds of sailors, NASA engineers, and recovery specialists, the very people who had trained for months for this exact moment, cheered until their throats were raw. The celebration wasn't just on the ship. In San Diego, families at the Air and Space Museum watch party cheered at the live broadcast as the crew took their first shaky steps. Globally, world leaders and even Hollywood stars like Ryan Gosling and William Shatner sent immediate messages of congratulations. On board, the crew was whisked to the medical bay for initial checks, but the smiles on their faces told the real story. "We really hoped," Reid Wiseman said later, reflecting on the moment, "that we could for just a moment have the world pause and remember that this is a beautiful planet in a very special place." They had left as explorers, but they returned as the pioneers of the Artemis generation, proving that the path to the moon was officially open again. The journey officially concluded on Friday, April the 10th, 2026, when the Orion capsule splashed down at 8:07:47 p.m. EDT in the Pacific Ocean. Following a swift recovery by the USS John P. Murtha, the crew returned to NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston for a post-mission briefing. Under the glare of the press conference lights, still adjusting to the heavy pull of Earth's gravity, the 4 astronauts shared their first reflections on the mission that took them further than any humans in history. The crew's final words, Commander Reid Wiseman: "We went there to test a ship, but we came back with a deeper sense of responsibility. Our soul's hope was that for just one moment the world could pause and remember that this planet is a beautiful, very special place. We should cherish what we've been gifted." Pilot Victor Glover, reflecting on his faith in the view from deep space, Glover noted that the mission was just the next step in a longer journey. "We are doing this to fulfill a promise to the people. It's the bridge that gets humanity to Mars." Mission specialist Christina Koch, emphasizing the mission's technical grit over its records, she remarked, "It's not about farthest, first, or fastest. It's about the teamwork and the dedication it took to take on those big challenges. We can't explore deeper unless we're willing to take these risks." Mission specialist Jeremy Hansen, as the first Canadian to venture to the lunar vicinity, Hansen looked toward the future. "You do a lot of testing on the ground, but the final test is when you get this hardware to space, and it was a doozy. We're ready for Artemis III." As the briefing concluded, the sentiment was clear. The moon was no longer just a destination for photos, but a workplace for the Artemis generation. The Artemis II mission The first crewed lunar voyage in over 50 years concluded with a successful splashdown on Friday, April 10th, 2026. This mission surpassed several milestones set during the Apollo era while establishing a new baseline for modern deep space exploration. Mission comparison: Artemis II versus Apollo. The table below highlights key differences between the Artemis II mission and historical Apollo records. Feature Artemis II 2026 Apollo missions 1968-1972. Farthest distance 252,756 miles from Earth, 248,655 miles. Apollo 13 1970. Max re-entry speed 23,840 mph, 38,367 kph, 24,816 mph. Apollo 10 1969. Mission duration 9 days, 1 hour, 32 minutes, 6 times 12 days. Average lunar proximity 4,067 miles. Flyby 67 miles. Standard orbit. Crew size 4, first woman, person of color, Canadian. 3, all male, all American. Key record farthest distance. Traveled Artemis II intentionally broke the 56-year-old record for the farthest distance from Earth reached by humans. The record: on April 6, 2026, the Orion spacecraft reached a peak distance of 252,756 miles. Context: this surpassed the 1970 record of 248,655 miles set by Apollo 13, which achieved that distance out of necessity during its emergency return maneuver, re-entry, and landing dynamics. While Artemis II broke distance records, it did not claim the speed record. Speed: Apollo 10 remains the fastest crewed spacecraft in history, hitting 24,116 mph during re-entry. Artemis II reached approximately 23,140 mph, slightly lower because its launch vehicle imparted less initial energy than the Saturn V. Trajectory: to protect the Orion heat shield, NASA used a steeper re-entry profile for Artemis II instead of the originally planned skip re-entry, reducing the duration of intense thermal exposure.